No, hold on to the floor. We don't want to get into the floor. It'll be chaos. So give him his minute.
Oh no, we can't have a shout fest now. No.
Shall you play Mozart for your infant? Beethoven? Da 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 da. Your baby has Beethoven Symphony in here. Where is Baby Symphony? Beethoven never listened to Beethoven vent baby. Cube of wood, what your child needs.
So, first off, I'm a volunteer, and to the candidates before I start, I have to apologize. It came out of the closet. The green shirt doesn't depict a certain affiliation one way or the other. So I'd like to think I'm going to be nonpartisan. We're going to go 5 minutes to open. Each candidate will get to speak 5 minutes. And then we'll have questions. And each candidate will get a minute to respond to a question. And then these stir sticks that we have here, if William says something and Jennifer scratches her head and she wants to jump in and can't hold her tongue, she just raises the stir stick to me, and we'll start with 3 and see how it goes. And then Jennifer will have a comment, we'll have a minute to comment on her comment. And then William's not allowed to comment unless he gives in a stir stick. And so once you've used up a stir stick, just throw it into the middle cup, and they won't double use them on you. We have William from the Green Party, Jennifer from the Liberals, and Lee, the incumbent, from the Conservatives. All right, so Jennifer, you got 5 minutes. You can come up here, you can go there.
Well, I hope you're going to be able to hear me tonight. My voice is getting weaker as I talk and listen, talk more, listen more, sleep less. So, thank you to everyone for coming to the forum today. Thank you to Killarney Glengarry Community Hall. I think that the community association, it's a sign of the power of your community that you've organized the event, and it's a sign of caring about your neighbors and caring about democracy. So thank you very much. And thank you for the other candidates for attending, and I believe one candidate is in Edmonton.
That's correct. The NDP, the candidate took sick, and the official candidate is an Edmontonian. He couldn't make it down for the event.
I'm here today because I believe in the power of democracy in Canadian society. We are in an election today because the Conservative government lost the confidence of Canadians and lost the confidence of the House of Commons. A government is supposed to work for the people. Limiting the truth, hiding the facts, altering documents, and lying under oath are not acceptable. We can do better. It's time for change. I plan to engage Calgarians. My primary goal is open communication channels. As an elected representative, I want to know your concerns and ideas on issues before I vote. My plan is to make public all of the input, those concerns and questions that I would hear from you, and also commit to making public the information that I receive in order to make my decision in my role as an MP. It is critical that for at least 2 hours of every week, I would be available to engage in a live discussion with constituents. The only way to do that is to use every means possible. Obviously, some of the time I wouldn't be in the city. So we would include live town halls when I was here, round tables, opening up the internet channels, connecting through social media in a regular and daily way, and of course telephone, mail, and email. You can't be an effective MP if you operate at arm's length. There are 2 reasons I'm asking for your support. First, I have the experience, and I believe I'm the best candidate. I have 7 years' experience as a local politician, and many politicians will tell you that's where you learn best how to serve the people. Because as an elected trustee, you're at the community level, you are reacting directly and interacting directly with your community every day. I also have experience as a facilitator and a negotiator in interest-based problem solving and negotiations. What that means is that I take as a practice looking out for win-win solutions. And I do that in politics as well as in my legal career. In my 40s, I went back to law school, and now I'm a lawyer and practice as a civil litigator. The second reason that I think that you should support me is that we have the best platform. The platform is a platform to support you and your family to move Canada forward. Canadians have told us they're worried about healthcare, urban infrastructure, and social issues. We have a plan to address those issues. We will build a framework to support the people of Canada. People are the biggest asset this country has. So that's why in our platform we have a plan to maintain and defend free, quality, timely health care for all Canadians. To implement a family care program so that people can stay at home and look after seriously ill relatives. We will establish a learning passport for every student that has the marks to go to post-secondary. They would be able to obtain $1,000 per year for 4 years, or if they were lower income, $1,500 a year for 4 years. In addition, veterans would be able to get a full 4-year tuition and books to attend post-secondary when they return from service or honorable discharge. We have a plan to create... Pardon me?
Just wrap up, that's fine.
Okay. We have a plan to create pension, improve GIS, and work with all levels of government on a poverty strategy and an affordable housing plan. These policies are clearly different than the other parties. I'm looking forward to your questions, and I'll be happy to do my best to answer them. Thank you.
You okay going second? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all so much for joining us tonight at the Killarney Glengarry Community Hall. I'm running for election as your Green Party candidate because Calgary-Centre deserves a louder voice, a stronger voice. And it's so important to be here in front of you all this evening because your voices and your ideas are a critical part of how and why a democracy works. In fact, public forums on the issues that matter to you are as old as democracy itself. You're entitled to a member of Parliament who is empowered for you and accountable to you. Public forums like this one tonight are what ensure I am empowered and accountable. So let me tell you a little bit about the ideas that matter to Calgary-Centre in this election. It's time for Calgary-Centre to be the epicenter of the smart economy this country needs to prosper in the 21st century. A smart economy features green jobs, people and businesses investing money and labor in renewable energy systems, freight and passenger railway services, and efficient buildings. A smart economy features healthy industry, sustainable and profitable farms and ranches, forestry enterprises where we add value to the wood right here at home, and jobs and small businesses where real people make real products. It invests in new tools and technologies to turn energy from the end into a beginning. And a smart economy features a government that lives within its means, where Ottawa balances the books, modernizes the way it works, and gets out of the business of picking winners and propping up losers. It's time for Calgary-Centre to be the example to Canadians of how a true democracy works in this country. When's the last time you pointed to question period in Parliament as a demonstration of good behavior for your children? If your instincts lean toward the fundamental Canadian values of cooperation, civility, and fair play, looking at what's happening on Parliament Hill these days is more likely to bring to mind a cage fight. You elect your member of Parliament to do a job for you, defend your rights, bring your concerns in Killarney Glengarry to the national stage, and see to it that the business of the nation gets done transparently and respectfully. And that's a job you're entitled to see done irrespective of the color of your coat. In a true democracy, we live by our principles. We lead by example. We make every voice in Calgary-Centre count. And it is time for Calgary-Centre to be the showcase for the strong communities our nation can build together. A strong community takes less income tax money out of families' pockets and helps them share the load with more flexible work and childcare solutions. A strong community supports our elders, supports our mental and physical well-being, and supports the urban places and common spaces that give us time for what really matters. Let's bring Ottawa back to the table to invest in transit, safeguard our health systems, and make human life in our cities humane. Investing in transit is a key pillar of a Green Party budget that puts Calgary-Centre first, with a budget plan that funds $2.1 billion nationally in mass transit capital construction costs.
through 2014. Building strong communities in Calgary-Centre takes work. It takes time, effort, determination, and a little tender loving care to maintain and enhance the essential infrastructure we need and share with our friends and neighbors. We don't notice basic things like effective transit systems, water and sewer infrastructure, playgrounds, housing, schools, community halls, and healthcare when they're working properly and firmly in place. But when the buses are packed and backed up on gridlocked roads, or when water mains fail for want of a nail that municipalities are too strapped to afford, we sure notice then, don't we? Strong communities involve and engage everyone who lives in, ranging from the young families getting started in their lives together to the elders who deserve the dignity and independence to keep contributing and continue offering their wisdom to the neighborhood and the world around them. After all, the reason you make a living is that so you can come back home to a strong community where you and your families and your friends and neighbors can have fulfilling and meaningful lives. But Ottawa has shirked its responsibilities to you. Parliament has become so snarled in gridlock of its own making that it can't see and can't fathom the damage that its neglect of our cities and your community has wrought. Calgary-Centre deserves a representative who can get Parliament's eye back on the ball and back on the job, serving Canadians. Now, to implement the smart economy, strong communities, and true democracy we need in Calgary-Centre, you're absolutely right to demand a plan. We have one. We've crunched the numbers. The Green Party of Canada is the only party running in this election to have a baseline federal budget that meets the exacting standards of bankers like TD's Don Drummond, to have a tangible and viable plan that gets Ottawa back in the black. Our budget plan hits polluters where it hurts and rewards people in Calgary-Centre who act responsibly, live sustainably, and do the right thing. We will knock 3 percentage points off the federal debt to GDP ratio over the next 3 years, and we will do it prudently and responsibly. Our green fiscal plan puts people and their families in Calgary-Centre on our shoulders where they belong. The Green Party of Canada has a platform and a plan that serves Calgary-Centre's aspirations and immediate needs. Our plan for a smart economy draws on the drive and the dynamism that attracts people to Calgary-Centre. Our plan for strong communities builds on the urban vibrancy and sustainability that the people of Calgary-Centre seek in choosing to live here. And our plan for true democracy speaks to the vision and values that so many of us in Calgary-Centre share. It's time to put Calgary-Centre first. On May 2nd, help me turn Calgary-Centre green.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Robert, and to the community for putting this on. We haven't had as many forums this time around as we have in the past. There's been, I think, one of the reasons I think is like the difficulties you had in sort of getting organized was the short sort of fuse we had on this election campaign. Many of you have expressed the concern that it was a little slow starting. It was a while out. Mostly because we hadn't expected an election quite this quickly. I'm sorry? Speak up. Right, I heard that. I'm speaking about the election being called unexpectedly. We didn't expect an election. We didn't want an election. I think most Canadians didn't want an election. We had just put forth the budget, our fifth budget as a government. This budget, I think, would have been well received by Canadians. It was constructed with some input from the opposition parties. Of course, you know we've been in a minority government, the longest-serving minority government in Canadian history, through a very difficult time, through a recession that has gripped the world. Canada, as you know, has fared very well. I think a lot of the credit for that goes to Canada, to the leadership that Canada has shown throughout the recession, both at the G8 meetings, the G20 meetings, where the world's industrial leaders came together and took the lead of Stephen Harper and the Conservative government and said, we can't allow this recession to slide into a depression as happened in the past. And Harper, with his background, oddly enough, having been there only 2 or 3 years, was one of the more senior people at the table with all the elections we'd had in Europe, in Britain, in the United States. Some of you, although not too many in this room at this point, remember the 30s and what happened when the policies were different than were proposed by Stephen Harper this time around. The United States particularly was isolationist. They withdrew into the their own country. They reduced exports, reduced imports, and it brought the whole world to a crunching halt in the Depression. We'd seen that before. We didn't want to go there again. Harper suggested we stimulate the economies of the world, keep the economy going. People were getting nervous about their future. They were putting off large purchases. They were saying, we're not sure if we're going to have a job next year. We're not sure if we're going to have a job next month the way this recession's going. Let's put off the purchase of that new home or even a new car or a large appliance. The economy was grinding to a halt. The way that it had been done in the past, it was done internally in the United States in the 30s with the New Deal and building great dam projects and others. It was to build infrastructure, to put money into government projects that needed to be done across the country and that could be done quickly. I think this is, it's been shown that we were able to get through the recession much better by getting people to work and getting people to work right away through projects, many of which were done in Calgary. In any event, I think I'm happy to discuss those things further, but I think we need to continue the path that we're on. I think that Canada has fared very well in the last, through the recession. We have a plan for the second phase of the Economic Action Plan. We'll keep Canada growing, keep jobs going. I'd be happy to talk further about specific issues to this riding. The two that have come up during my term, I have been your Member of Parliament for 7 years here in Calgary. I grew up in this riding. I've lived in this riding all my life, except when I was away to school or serving with Peter Lougheed in Edmonton briefly as his Chief of Staff, or in Ottawa in the Prime Minister's office. Other than that, I've lived in Calgary for over 60 years in this constituency. I skated on your rink, Robert,
Could you tell
a long
us
time
some of the
ago.
things that you have done for Calgary-Centre?
No, sorry.
Oh, I'd be happy to tell you about things.
We'll get
I could
into
go
the
on
debate.
for a long time about things for Calgary-Centre. Calgary-Centre has done extremely well through the Economic Action Plan, and I do send out material to my constituents. You should probably receive something at least once a month from me, seeking your views, but also explaining what we have done. We've done remarkable things here in terms of Mount Royal University, Bull Valley College downtown, and creating programs for training our not just young people but also new Canadians. Is that it for me? All right. Listen, I'd be happy to answer these questions in more detail as we go. I'm hoping that as my constituents you've been following for the past 7 years, I try to keep you informed, and I've had a lot of correspondence with you over the years to explain what we're doing and what you'd like us to do. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone that would like to move up? We don't have the luxury of a PA system to the infinitely poor Killarney Glengarry Community Association. Donations are always accepted. Once again, from the crowd, I'm the worst guy. I want a debate, I organized one, but I have to sit back and sort of pay attention and read questions and be focused, because I'd like to be the guy out there yelling, what about this, what about that? So it's hard for me not to say anything, but I'm going to ask you folks to as well. Sit back, relax. The candidates will be here after. They usually hang around till about 1 in the morning, answering questions for sure. And Jennifer brought her pajamas, so we're in good stead. When I stand up and say we spent $1 million, and you know that I haven't, don't sigh, raise your fist. Try and just hold back. I know it's tough, but it's a tough crowd. Oh my God, we're never getting through all these. What do you feel makes Calgary great? And I'll pick a different leader every time and try and set him off guard. But you're closest, William, so you start. 1 minute, what makes Calgary great?
Really, it drills down to innovation and inspiration. We've had the advantage of location since 1873. I mean, we've had a Northwest Mounted Rifles barracks in this town for quite some time. We've had the railway coming through, and with the rivers flowing through what became downtown Calgary and Ramsey and Inglewood, we had the luck to become a transportation and logistics hub that brought cattle into and out of our city, that brought energy into and out of our city, and ultimately brought people in. And those people who came here to seek their fortunes
You got 2 seconds.
Keep going.
Okay.
You have my 15 seconds, Dave.
That is ultimately the inspiration of our surroundings and the drive that brought people together. That's what makes Calgary great.
Yeah, maybe we'll go to 2 minutes. It might be a bit short. Let's see how it goes. Jennifer, take it away. You got a minute. See how you do.
Well, I have to say people. It's the people that make it great. It's a pretty barren place, actually. We planted most of the trees here, although I agree that the water is wonderful. The people of Calgary, obviously, most of us are immigrants from somewhere. That collection and combination of immigrants made it a great city. I think that Canada doesn't benefit from our leadership right now because what makes us great isn't there in the people that we're sending, but it's risk-taking, it's pressing for achievement, it's that impatience to get the job done, and it's that willingness to forgive when people make mistakes because you believe in risk-taking and you understand could be you next time. That's what makes this city great, and that's why we need to send someone who's a little bit like that to Ottawa so that Canada can benefit from seeing, and so that we can bring those. I keep saying to you, I don't want to just bring your concerns and issues. I want to bring your ideas there, because the ideas and the urgency that Calgarians feel about achievement and production and getting things done is what makes us great. Thanks. I had time to think of you.
I'm gonna pass the first question just so the candidates get a little bit of a chance to heads up. But I'll pass it. Just read it and pass it on. And I won't start with you, Lee, because I know you see it last. But go ahead. You got a minute.
Thank you. I start by beginning with what Jennifer said, and it's people. But it's people, I think, that are great about Calgary, but it's also the values that we have and the values that I've grown up with in this city, in this part of the city. And it's what we've created. It's the Western values. It's the values of neighbors. For me, it's home. It's about people taking care of ourselves, but also taking care of each other. I think of the volunteerism. I think of people caring about their community. I think of what has made it great. I think of the Calgary Stampede, a volunteer organization like that was able to create a volunteer Olympics, which was one of the greatest Olympics ever had. It's the spirit and the values that we have as Calgarians. That's what makes me proud to represent Calgary, and proud to have been here and will stay here my days. Thank you.
Do you favor increasing or decreasing financial support for the CBC?
The Liberal Party believes in the value of public broadcasting, the value to our democracy, and I think certainly as we see the concentration of media in very few hands, and in the hands of people who are wanting that industry to use it as a political tool for their own values, we see the greater value in having a public broadcaster. So when we look at where and what has happened to the CBC over these last years with the Conservative budgeting, the Liberals would favor increases, but also stable long-term funding. The guarantee, like businesses like, to be able to plan for the future and to be able to know that that funding is going to be there, even though we're going into tough economic times. I can't tell you how many people at the doorstep have told me how important CBC has been in their life, and I strongly believe that it should be publicly funded with tax dollars and supplemented with private money. Thank you.
Sure. It's a question that comes up every election, and I should just, because we don't have a lot of time, just give you the facts. The federal government today subsidizes the CBC to the tune of $1.1 billion a year. So state broadcasting in Canada gets $1.1 billion a year. In the last budget, the budget I mentioned earlier that was tabled in the House, the Conservative government proposed to continue that funding and add another $60 million in discretionary funding for additional projects that the CBC wants to launch. They have a unique mandate that other public broadcasters or private broadcasters don't have, and that's is why they feel they need the additional money. The last and as a matter of fact, every budget that we've brought in gave the CBC at least $1 billion in subsidy. The Liberals under Martin, the last Liberal government, cut the CBC budget by $414 million. That was the only time in the last decade that it's dropped below $1 billion in subsidy.
Well, of course, the question of funding the CBC is always interesting because, as a Calgarian, I still haven't forgiven the CBC for Wild Roses and Tom Stone. But as a Canadian, I understand the value of communicating Canada's message to its people and to the world. And that's one of the reasons why I am running for the Green Party in this election, because as part of our 3-year budget, the Green Party of Canada would provide stable base funding for the CBC and actually increase its funding to the tune of an additional $450 million over the next 3 years. We believe it is important that to build strong communities, we need to provide quality Canadian television and radio content in both official languages to all Canadians. And absolutely, we have to stand up for the CBC and make sure that they can do their job effectively and get every Canadian's voice into the discussion.
What about CKUA and CJS? That's right. They don't get it. All right, I got
$1 billion less than a fake lake.
You have a big head.
Inside voice, Allison. Inside voice.
Inside voice. Inside voice.
See, if you want your question to get attention, you need to come in with a headline. That's the next question here. But I'll make a joke that sort of goes along with it. Where's the best place in Canada to have a heart attack? In a cab.
The morgue.
In a cab in downtown Toronto.
Not the general.
Now the question. Why is the government spending $29 billion for jets without engines, and we have no money for training more doctors and nurses for senior care?
Well, I presume it's a sarcastic way of speaking about the F-35s that we're about to purchase.
Just remember how you have to yell when you're in the House of Commons. Just yell like that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I will. I try not to yell in the House of Commons. I think I'm sorry about the show that goes on every day in question period, and it really is just a function of, I think, the frustration of many members, and they're all vying for their clip on the late night news, so they get as crazy as they can just to get that, and it achieves their purposes. It happens when you have a minority government, and we have to have that kind of balance. The F-35 is a consortium project of most of our allied countries, United States, France, Britain, Germany. These are very expensive aircraft. We've been competing each other for the building of these aircraft in the past. Our F-18s that are now coming close to obsolete. They've got about another 10 years in life. These planes that we're talking about, the F-35s, will not be built for another 5 to 10 years. There won't be any money spent on these for another 5 to 10 years, but there has to be planning for these things. They're very expensive. They have the highest technology of any planes. The planes that are being built as a consortium by all of these countries. We're each getting something out of it, and we're each getting into it. Canada is taking about 65 of these planes. There will be about 1,000 built. Much of that will be built in Canada, and much of the money that is spent and the maintenance will be done in Canada.
Okay, good. So a minute and a half to Jennifer.
Okay, thank you. Fighter jets. Well, if $1 billion sounded like a lot for CBC, which touches everyone, fighter jets, and we don't know how much they cost. I'm just going to remind you, the contempt had to do with putting in place items and not telling people how much they cost. Before the release of the information by the budget officer, Kevin Page, before he made that announcement, we were talking 16 billion, and then it jumped to 30, now maybe 35. The planning is backwards. The government has not been responsible in doing its job. This is just one example. We did not start by saying, what do we need? Do we need to patrol the north? Because this plane can't do it. Okay? What do we need in a jet? What can we afford? Where are we going? we should not be tied to all of the past. And if we said we were going to do something 5 years ago or 10 years ago, well, now we have to march on blindly to do those kinds of things. Times change, budgets change, and we need to change with those. We need to look at what our priorities are on these planes. There is the consistent lack of information and planning is indicative of the problems that the opposition had with approving a budget when you actually don't have the information to vote on that budget for. So I just want to state that because it's a very fundamental principle of respect for the House of Commons and for the public that we all have that information and we discuss important decisions before, and the values and what we're looking for before they happen, not afterwards, and not after, not in the middle of an election when that is not the appropriate time to talk about the jets that we may need in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. Ladies and gentlemen, if you came to my car lot and I told you that the $50,000 car, give or take, had an engine as a $29,000 adder, you'd either go looking at another lot or you'd start looking into a transit pass, wouldn't you?
Buy a bike.
That too. But I think really the entire question of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter and how much it would actually cost speaks to a larger issue that we need to address once we actually start sitting in Parliament again. What are we asking our armed forces to do? Constitutionally, we depend on our armed forces for defense of the realm, to help people out, to respond to civil distress. So if we are aiming to achieve those objectives and to stand up for peacekeeping and for peacemaking operations where need be, we need to take a closer look at the value proposition that's being put before us. Is the F-35 something that can actually do the job we are asking it to do? If it's not, where else do we need to look? Where do we need to revise the quote before we can actually pull the trigger on getting a fighter jet that actually meets our operational needs in Canada, in our north, and around the world?
Greenhouse gases, re the federal support for public transportation. Is oil sands receive subsidies? What about wind power and solar power? They too create jobs. Why no subsidies for them?
As I've said, we need to rethink the energy sources we need in Canada to create the smart economy that we need to prosper. And absolutely, we are going to need oil sands development. They're not going away overnight. We're not going to shut them down overnight. But why are we eating into our profits when we could be investing in more sustainable and more renewable energy sources here at home? I mean, most of you already know we have companies that are putting up wind farms in southern Alberta. Most of you already know that our C-train system in Calgary runs off power that's drawn from wind power batteries coming from southern Alberta. What we need to do is we need to diversify our plays. We need to start allocating the responsibility of providing energy to those sources that can actually do that job responsibly, sustainably, and profitably. And that absolutely... Thank you.
Remember, you got 2 sentences after. You don't have to... You still have a little to go. You squeeze it out. And if you do have a little more to say, then I'll add a little more on the other candidates. So you can always... don't feel cut short.
I think there are like 4 major issues that we're talking about here. So one of them is public transportation, which I know that Green Party has a strong feeling about that. So does the Liberal Party. One of the comments that I would make on this is, where are those great dams? Where are the great railroads that were built with these, $60 billion in infrastructure money that was being spent over the last few years? We have nothing to show. There was no plan for the stimulus spending to create great infrastructure that would be an asset to the country for a long time. So public transportation is there. Greenhouse gases and oil sands. Oil sands, the incentive that's there, so my husband's a tax lawyer, let me just talk about, is capital cost depreciation accelerated. So the cost of the equipment you get to write it off over so many years, and instead of over 10 years, you get to write it off over 3 years, something like that. So you defer your taxes, a great portion of your taxes later. What the Liberal Party has said is that that money should be shifted to be spent on reclamation in the oil sands in Alberta. So the Liberal plan is to, in fact, redirect oil sands money to place a higher priority earlier in the cycle on reclamation, and it's not to tax or to disadvantage oil sands in that way, but to advantage the local community with the reclamation sooner. Greenhouse gases, I'm going to say just quickly. On renewable energy, and I'm going to just look in my, it is a red book, but the Liberals are committed to quadruple Canada's low-impact renewable energy production from 2009 levels by 2017 to significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and create clean energy. To meet the goal, we will bring back the Renewable Power Production Incentive, a highly successful program cancelled by Harper's Conservatives. I think that speaks about the need and the recognized need to give incentives for power generation for renewable power. Thanks.
Thank you. There are no specific, other than capital cost allowance that we have in most businesses in Canada, certainly in mining industries and oil and gas industry. I spoke about, there was some question about subsidies. We hear this a lot about subsidies for the oil sands. The oil sands don't get any subsidies that any other business doesn't get, any other business in the resource business in our country, anywhere in the country. The programs that we have for incentives to reduce carbon emissions are the same everywhere. And these are essentially about reduction of carbon emissions and sustainable energy. Those are the subsidies we get. And we have huge subsidies in this country for all kinds of alternative energy forms. We also have gone, and as you saw it in Copenhagen, it was our government caused other countries to come in and deal in a practical way with how we could all find a program, a way to resolve the climate change issues that everyone is in together. There's no point in us agreeing to one or another if we don't have the largest emitters in the world not in the game. If we don't have China, if we don't have the United States in on the program, we all breathe the same air. It's a nice sounding note, but if we don't have everybody on the same page, as we didn't have in Kyoto, that we do have in the Copenhagen Agreement, we would never have achieved that the success of Kyoto and start on the path that we've been on and supported by this government. I should say, for those that we get a lot of criticism about emissions from the oil sands, there's far greater emissions from coal burned in California to produce our electricity than there is from the oil sands.
Wait, we have a rebuttal, so go ahead.
Good.
Throw on one of your things.
Putting this wrong. So I'm going to speak about it because there are so many times that I could rebut, and I always do want to jump in too. But on Copenhagen, Canada was seen as an anchor, as a block to trying to show leadership and move forward. If it is our intention as a country, which is not very populated, to be a leader, we have to do it in meaningful ways. We can't lead by having the biggest armed forces. We can't lead by having the greatest institutions in the sense of huge cities with great populations. But we can lead with our ideas, and we can lead by setting an example. And Canada and Mr. Harper have not set an example in the area of the environment, and it has harmed our reputation, and it has created doubt about what kind of a country we are. And people may not want to move here, they may not want to invest here. It has implications all the way down the line when we don't show leadership in areas that we are expected to show leadership, that we have a history of showing leadership in. And I'm going to say, this is one aspect of being the Calgarian. You know, you want to go out front, you want to be there. You don't want to say, I'm going to wait till China does something about it. You know what? China is doing something about it. So it's too late to leave on that. Thank you.
Oh, you want to rebut?
I just wanted to say that I think it was a Liberal talking in the back. Well, the Liberal candidate was speaking.
some of the points in the budget we have posted online for public comment. I can tell you that as part of the Green Party platform, we would eliminate subsidies on fossil fuels. We would eliminate accelerated capital cost allowance credits. That would cost on the order of $4.5 billion over 3 years. We would make up that ground, again, as part of a smart economy, by funding $3 billion in electrical grid upgrades over the next 3 years, another $540 million in solar roof programs nationwide, and an additional $1.05 billion in energy retrofits to bring buildings, houses, and commercial enterprises up to codes so they can use energy more effectively and run their operations more cheaply and more sustainably.
So I'm passing your questions through so the candidates get just a little bit of a heads up on it so they can get their thoughts together clear. So as they go on, just pass them back and forth. Okay, the next question, sort of dear to my heart, it's about corporations. And I don't know if I mentioned I'm a small businessman, but I am. And between filling out EI, CPP, WCB, OH&S reports, I'm always trapped in a myriad of paperwork. Paper from all of the different levels of government. But the question is, corporate tax cuts are supposed to create jobs because a corporation now has a profit than to create them. Give them a big break, they create jobs. So first, are there any statistics? And then why does it just go carte blanche? And where is the accountability?
I actually have a whole rant that I like to do on this because it was interesting to me. I went to law school when I was in my 40s. I was the oldest person in my class to start with. And learning about corporate law was of interest to me. A corporation must be accountable to its shareholders. It is not accountable to the public. They must do, within the law, what they can do to make money. That is something that was tested in a court case when Henry Ford decided to pay his workers a lot of money. And people asked him why. They said, well, I want people to be able to buy my cars. He was sued by his shareholders, and they had to roll back those wages because that is not what you're in the business of doing in a corporation. You have a duty of loyalty to your shareholders. The government has a duty to the people to hold corporations to account. That's our job in government. We make that framework. And then corporations are happy to live within it. They don't want to do some of those things, but they are bound. So if we just pass along taxes or change the tax situation for a corporation, they have no obligation to hire people. They do have obligations to return the maximum profit to the shareholders that they think is appropriate. That is the balance they will always strike. It is not always to their workers. So I don't have statistics on it. I'm just quoting to you the law in the area of corporate law. And a government has a role to play in holding corporations accountable. And corporations count on it, and we're not getting it right now. Thanks.
Yeah, it seems to be more of a philosophical question whether you believe in governments hiring everybody or having the private sector involved in creating the wealth and creating jobs in the country. I happen to believe that the private sector creates the jobs in this country. These are the people that employ many Canadians. When, particularly in a recessionary period, when times are tough, if corporations are overtaxed or have other expenses that they find difficulty meeting, well, they're going to have to cut back some way. The only way that they continue to exist is to raise the price of the goods that they produce or lay off people. When you reduce tax, it gives them a greater opportunity to expand their company, to hire more people, to create new products that they can sell. I think it's a philosophical discussion, frankly. It makes sense to me. It clearly is something we've seen in the last few years as Canada, as Alberta, particularly Alberta is the classic example of the world, where we've created a low tax base and attracted investment into Canada. Particularly through this recession, we are getting more and more American companies who can't compete moving their head offices to Canada. There's a far greater influx of corporations into Canada because they can have a base here in Canada to work from with a low tax base and export from it. We're becoming a global economy. It's where you're based, and where you're taxed, it makes a big difference in where you can go. It used to simply be you have to be where the resource was that you manufactured. Now tax is becoming a part of it. And if we can keep taxes low, we have more people employed, more people are paying tax, and we net out higher revenues in the end.
Thank you, Robert, and I understand where you're coming from because I run a small business myself, and certainly everyone who runs a small business who has to deal with clients, deal with payroll, deal with the little things that actually keep a business moving in this environment knows that there are sensitivities. There are points where you have to make a decision. Now, the Green Party of Canada would restore the corporate tax rate to 19% to deal with structural deficit issues. But at the same time, because small businesses have a lot more to worry about than a bump of a few percentage points in a corporate tax rate, when you're dealing with payroll issues, when you're trying to decide whether to hire or fire someone to take on that new person to expand your business, we know that employment insurance and CPP contributions constitute a de facto payroll tax. So that is why we would reduce both employer and employee contributions to employment insurance and the Canada Pension Plan by 1/3. That adds up to nearly $70 billion over the next 3 years. We would step up to the plate and make up the difference to keep these funds solvent and make sure that small business owners who need to make that decision to bring that extra person on board has that flexibility to do just that.
May as well use these since I got them. I just want to say, when we have taxation and corporate taxation, we see in jurisdictions, especially in the United States, what they call the race to the bottom. And everyone tries to incent some companies to come in where they don't have any taxes, and then they have no money for their infrastructure, or they build their plant just outside of a city, and that city is expected to have the urban infrastructure and pay for schools and hospitals and libraries and fire stations because the people go out to work in some place that's just outside of their city with low taxes. It is not sustainable. There is no proof that reducing corporate taxes once you get to a certain level, let me say, Canada's there. Canada is the second lowest out of the G7 in our corporate tax rate right now. And I want to also just clarify, the role of putting in legislation and regulation on industry was done by the Liberals with Canada's banks, and that's the reason that the Conservatives can say that this country is in a good financial position right now. And one more point on that, when money is transferred to shareholders, in many cases, that's great because those are fellow Canadians. But many of these corporations, as Mr. Richardson just said, aren't even Canadian corporations. And that shareholder profit isn't staying in Canada. So it's not like the difference going to one neighbor who has shares and the other neighbor who's the worker. It's going to someone else somewhere else and losing for the workers in Canada. Thanks.
I know the Norwegians control the fish farming on the west coast, but we don't have time for that question. It's time for a break. So let's take a 5-minute recess.
Your child is beautiful. Your child is special. Your child deserves the very best tools designed to stimulate their intellectual growth. Your child deserves Cube of Wood. Child growth experts have refined Cube of Wood over decades. Cube of Wood is not simply a toy, it is a learning tool. A window through which your child is introduced to the very laws of nature. Drop Cube of Wood. Where does it go? Cube of wood goes down. Physics. What mark does it make on the wall? Color. Bite cube of wood. Does cube of wood yowl when bitten? Sound. Studies have shown more interactive a toy, less child can learn from playing with it. Rock band drum kit? Danger! No. Drum pads make noise when struck. On-screen representation flashes a bright color corresponding to the struck drum's circumference. This could permanently damage your child's ability to play with non-interactive objects. Sound puzzle board? Danger! No! Puzzle pieces must be rotated exactly right to fit. Cube of wood would never make your baby feel like a failure. Baby UI, danger! No! By rewarding the touch of an iPad screen with colorful shapes emitted at the point of contact, your child may form emotional attachment to the device. Will your baby stop loving you? After 5 minutes alone with Cube of Wood, your child will appreciate all the more your loving embrace. Cube of Wood, what your child needs.
I'm grouping them together up here. So there's some healthcare ones, there's some youth ones that I'd like to get to. There's a couple on the Libya war. Would you be willing to put your expenses up onto line so they're available for all of public?
I think it's a fair and a reasonable expectation for your Member of Parliament's expense records to be publicly available. Yeah, I mean, as part of a true democracy, we are transparent, we are accountable. You depend on us to give you the service and the voice you deserve. And as part of that service, you are entitled to know that your tax dollars are being spent prudently and effectively. So absolutely, I would insist on putting my expenses online in Parliament as your MP.
I'm aware that there's already a system for putting some of that online, whether you choose to or not. So I do agree with it as well. And in fact, my campaign team was looking at Mr. Richardson's, and I don't think this question was a setup by them, but he has either first, second, third highest expenses, which is, I think, unusual, and people should hold him to account for. Over $90,000 or $88,000 spent on 10%ers. Many of those going into ridings not held by the Conservatives in order to take that Conservative message out from Calgary to other parts of the country, which I think is inappropriate. The Liberals are also committed to a plan called Open Government, which would include releasing information of all of the departments as much as possible as your starting point and publishing that information, making it available to the public. That there would be an online database for grants, contributions, and contracts that are given out by the federal government. And that there would be access to the information when people apply for access to information, that your request for access to information would also be public. So you could see who is asking for information and how that is moving forward. Thanks.
I will, again, agree with you. I think I was always on the assumption that they always were. I think that our expenses are online, and they always have been.
There's only one Liberal that is doing that.
No, hold on the floor. We don't want to get into the floor. It'll be chaos. So give him his minute.
I think you'll find that all members of Parliament, it's in the budgetary record, that all members of Parliament's expenses are online. Expenses are essentially the same for all members of Parliament. They're statutory. They're regulated by the number of constituents you have, by the geography of your riding, how long it takes you, how far away your riding is. Most of the expenses of member of Parliament, I would say 90% of them, well, perhaps 85%, are transportation, going back and forth. The minority Parliament, we're required to be in Parliament pretty much the whole time it's sitting. You don't have the leisure of not attending. I mean, there are some members of Parliament that don't attend Parliament, but I won't get into that. I do, and we've considered our responsibility in a minority government to be in Parliament, to be in our seat, to be there for every vote. I come home every weekend. I'm a widower. I have still one of my kids at home, and I like to see my kids, make sure the house hasn't burned down while I've been away, but also I have office appointments every Friday, and I see constituents. And I go all day Fridays. I come home Thursday night. I go back to Ottawa Sunday night. And that's the bulk of our expenses. The other expenses, and why mine are, $10,000 or $15,000 higher than others, is because I do send out more mail to my ridings, more constituents reports. Jennifer has just referred to something called 10 percenters, and these are newsletters that you can send out to any 10% of your riding on an issue at any time. I don't send them to any place other than my own riding. I like to communicate with my constituents, and I can tell you that they do respond back. I have probably 500 a week that people return messages to me, and I respond to them personally in every case with a signed letter from me. So your research might be a little out in terms of me sending it to somebody else's writing.
I'm going to sort of summarize the, we got a couple here on youth. Yeah, the kids aren't coming out to vote. The kids are the neediest sector of the population. And what is your plan to keep young people engaged and to get them onto the doorstep for democracy?
Well, I was a school trustee, and I have raised 4 children, and 2 are still at university, but none of them are at home right now. One of the reasons I'm running is because of young people. I believe that they are the ones that we're doing all of this for, that they're the ones who are going to suffer our bad decisions and our poor leadership. They're the ones who are going to suffer because we've been a bad role model for them. My concerns about apathy have to do with people, not just young people, who've given up, who don't have the courage or the hope anymore that they can make a difference in this world, and that our country, if we don't have that hope anymore, will not be a great country. People really need to go to bed at night and think that they want to get up and just work it tomorrow, just nail it tomorrow. And what I see in the Liberal plan is all kinds of things to help people so that they can reduce those stress levels, and indirectly, hopefully, that will result in votes. My own campaign is working with young people. My own, I just did my own voter apathy video last night along one of the graffiti walls in Calgary, and I'd encourage you to look it up. Just Get Out and Vote Calgary is a message. I've had that message ever since 1992 when I ran as a school trustee. I knew I was going to win then. I knew I was going to win with great majorities, and I pushed my election team to try to get the greatest number of votes out, and we made that as a part of our message always was just get out and vote. I believe it is the power, and it is the most, it is the only power you really have in a democracy, and that's why people are dying for it right now. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I think we're really reasonably fortunate in this riding. We've always had a pretty good turnout. We have in the riding a lot of post-secondary institutions, and there's been a great interest. This is the first year, for example, we haven't had, I think our largest forum is at former Mount Royal College, now Mount Royal University. I think there is a pretty good interest here. I know we carry on a considerable amount of correspondence with young people during the course of a term, and also in this campaign, we're all aware of the new methods of communicating, and I was surprised at the number of young people we had that want to get involved in the campaign, want to get involved through Twitter and through Facebook and this sort of thing, and it's been quite encouraging to me, frankly. I'm encouraged with the involvement. I don't think it's any different or is changing. I think that people are getting involved more. Their communication is growing. And actually, I think an interest is growing at a younger age than it did in most of, I know, people that I grew up with.
Obviously, everyone is concerned with the levels of youth participation in the political process. And I think a couple of other people have alluded to the idea that we don't inherit this world from our grandparents. We bequeath it to our grandchildren. And with that thought in mind, I think as part of a true democracy, we have to ask ourselves, we're so busy chasing young people's votes on May 2nd. Has anyone given any thought to what we're supposed to do with them on May 3rd? To keep people engaged in the political process, we have to keep the conversation going. This show doesn't end on election night. It keeps on running. And we have an obligation, win, lose, or draw, to keep people connected, to keep people engaged, to inform them of the issues from now and in subsequent elections. Because if we want to talk to people and maintain the health of our democracy, it's our job to start listening, and that is the real challenge.
You just happened to pick a bad example of Mount Royal College, because right back there is the person who tried to organize the forum at Mount Royal College, and Mr. Richardson's team would not come to it. And that's the reason the rest of us didn't have the benefit of that forum. So you may not know that. I'm sorry, I believe the young person in the room. I believe the young person in the room. Okay, and then also, you were on record, and it's recorded, and also reported in the Herald, that you said the sign of that voter apathy was not a concern of yours because it was a sign of general voter satisfaction. Now, maybe since then you've seen the light, but I'd ask you, this is not, the facts are, one of the reasons I came home to run here is because in Calgary West, 60,000 votes are cast in the last election, and here only 45. And I think those 15,000 people are not voting for Mr. Richardson. I think there's an opportunity to replace a Conservative MP in the city of Calgary if we get a higher voter turnout. And that is something that we are working our hardest to get the highest voter turnout. I don't know who the voters are going to select, but we are working toward achieving this. It is the only way that we will see a change in this city, and it's not in Mr. Richardson's best interest to get a higher voter turnout. The last time there were 60,000 votes cast in Calgary-Centre was when Joe Clark won and beat a reformer. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to flip over to healthcare. We've got a couple on those. And it sort of ties in. There's a little bit about privatization. First question for the candidates. Would you privatize healthcare? And if so, what would be the benefit? And I think, just in regards to healthcare, would you privatize healthcare, and what would be the benefits of it?
No, I wouldn't privatize healthcare. Of course, we've got a generally well-respected healthcare system, a system that's respected around the world. It is a provincial jurisdiction, and the level of health care does vary somewhat across the country. The role of the federal government has been to establish a base of accessibility, to make sure that Canadians, wherever they live, have the same access to a level and a standard of health care that they do in one part of the country as in another, regardless of the resources or the ability of people to pay. That's the role of the federal government. Some of that's been usurped over the years by the politicians at the federal level wishing to gain votes by promising more, but it just costs more money. What we do now is have the federal government raise additional taxes and make transfers back to the provinces. Jennifer spoke earlier about Paul Martin balancing budgets. Well, there were two ways that happened. The one was that they reduced the transfers to the provinces to pay for health care and education to the point where all of the provinces ran deficits except Alberta, because over the 10 years of the Paul Martin finance minister and being prime minister, that was how they balanced the budgets. I think it was a noble cause to try to balance the federal budget, but not when you transfer it all onto the provinces, who all struggled in their health and education budgets as a result. The other way was that their neglect for infrastructure in the country. We had a 10-year deficit of infrastructure in this country, to a point where 5 years ago we had bridges falling down in Montreal, federal bridges in Quebec, because they neglected it. It's the same as anyone does when budgets are tight. You can do the routine maintenance, or and be able to carry on with the building longer, or you can avoid that maintenance, put money somewhere else, or not spend it, and you'll pay the bill at the end of the day. And that's why it came at a good time, our infrastructure program.
Be like Klein and blow them up.
When people talk about privatizing healthcare because they're trying to drill down to the root of the issue, which is that healthcare is an increasingly large element of provincial budgets that the Canada Health and Social Transfer is intended to help address. If we are looking to deal with healthcare properly, we have to understand, first of all, that the Green Party of Canada supports all 5 key principles of the Canada Health Act, and furthermore, would invest $900 million over 3 years to establish national pharmacare to make sure that the cost of prescription drugs gets back under control. But we have to look at why we're spending so much money on healthcare in the first place. It's that we are not responding to health problems until they become problems. We all know the saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? That's exactly what our platform is all about. If we can start dealing with these issues before they could become problems, before they become prohibitively expensive to treat, then, ladies and gentlemen, we can actually start making people healthier, give them happier lives, and make it easier and more sustainable to run an affordable healthcare system for everyone.
Fundamentally, in healthcare, we do need to look at all kinds of ways that we can look at health and not just sickness. And to look at, so some of the family care initiatives that the Liberals have brought forward are to reduce the number of people that would be in hospitals. There are a number of issues that need to be addressed, including food safety and security, looking at seniors' residents and affordable housing, looking at support for people who live in poverty because there are connections between poverty, illiteracy, and poor health. But the Conservatives have no credibility here when they talk about not privatizing this system. They've said before on Energy Trust, you know, we're not going to tax this. This is a huge area. It is very expensive. They have a large gap in their financing and their budget. They're not offering balanced budgets, and they're not saying where the money is going to come from. There is no money to be saved in privatization unless you pay people less, unless you pay nurses less, unless you pay the workers who are delivering direct services less, other than possibly some of the doctors. There's no money to be saved in privatizing. What you turn then is a system that's based on the Canadian values about equality, and turn it into a system that's based on for-profit, profiting from the sickness of the country. That is not going to work. That model is broken. It's not going to achieve greater health. It's not directed toward greater health. It's directed toward shareholders making more money in private corporations and at the expense of the public's health. This is a giant elephant in the room in this debate. If you can search in your hearts and really believe that Stephen Harper is going to protect our public health care system, then, you know, I think you're a bit gullible, because it's just not going to happen. You need to look somewhere else. You need to look out for this, because it is a fundamental value of our society that when we walk through the doors of a hospital, we will be treated equally, regardless of who we are, regardless of what wealth we have, that a doctor will take us in an order according to the resources they have available and the priorities they would place on your situation as you come in there. It's fundamental to our values.
I'm going to try to string 3 questions into one here. We've got some concerns around foreign aid, and that ties into some initiatives, Muskoka initiative for the wellness of children and maternal child health in developing countries, with Parliament ending abruptly. So it seems there was some good legislation on the books.
At risk of sounding like I have an answer in search of a question, I can tell you that the Green Party of Canada supports the implementation and the delivery of generic drugs to third world mothers. And moreover, we support the implementation of 0.7% of our GDP being spent on foreign aid worldwide. Because as a true democracy, ladies and gentlemen, as I've said before, we lead by example. When other countries seek our help in maintaining the health of their population, in maintaining the safety of their population, in standing up for the rights of their population, we are honor-bound to be there. We need to stand up and show the world that we are that light to which they can look. And so that is why, if it comes to spending money on generic drugs for people in Africa, for spending on foreign aid to make sure that we can make poverty history worldwide, we have to answer that call.
On the issue of that specific bill, and I can't remember the number because I think it changed a couple of times with prorogation, the Liberal Party is in support of the bill that would make available the affordable generic drugs to Africa. I taught in Africa. Canada and has changed its policy with respect to Africa. The African countries and leaders have felt that. They don't understand it. They feel a sense that Canada is not who they thought it was in being a friend. And it's a great continent that has tremendous prospects for the future. So that's not the only reason that I think we should change it, but it's more evidence of Harper abandoning people according to some political agenda that some of us can't understand. On the women, on maternal health, I have to say this. You know the only reason that women die and have maternal health issues? Because they get pregnant. That's the thing, right? We don't have men having all of these problems because they don't have children. So when women can control their reproductive rights and their reproductive abilities, then they have greater control of their health. It is not rocket science. You must support reproductive choice in other countries. You cannot say we'll have one set of values here in our democracy, but we'll import and give you another set that is the Christian set or the Harper set of values or whatever those are going to be in our foreign aid. It's 100% intolerable. And as a woman, I could not stand and look at another woman of this world knowing that we were going to try to impose some values on other women that we wouldn't impose on women here in Canada. Thanks.
Conservative government in the last 5 budgets has increased foreign aid through CETA, which is the foreign aid agency for Canada. There have been changes in the allocation of funds, and the allocation of funds and this refocus. We moved from a more of a broad shotgun approach, trying to give a little bit to every project and or to every country in need. And it's been more focused now on to do more work where we think it's where the agencies have told us it would the amount of money would get more value to the people that we're serving. We have moved towards a goal, an international goal that the UN established of 0.7% of our GDP to international aid. We're a long way from that. This goes back 15 years. We were on the track. It was about 0.1 when we started. This 1.14 when we started. Moved up to about 3.5% during the last of the Mulroney governments. The country was later into a serious deficit situation and balancing the budgets federally. The last Liberal government did reduce foreign aid, and it slipped back down again to about 2%. We are now increasing Canada's expenditures on foreign aid to reach the national goals that we have sought as a country upwards of 15 years ago.
I don't have a stick, but it's not true.
Oh, no, you're on
Just gonna say, I'm out of them.
All right, we're still looking for a volunteer to lead the next debate here at Killarney Hall. Happy to have you pass that job over. Let's move to the second bare knuckle round. No. We'll move now to the closing remarks.
Pleased to have joined you tonight, and I guess my broad part is because everybody's got questions to ask, and I don't know how much people change their views on a limited access or forum like this. I wish to say that I do this full time. I've been doing it for a long time, and try to answer questions, communicate with my constituents, not just during the election campaigns. We lay out our platform. I could constantly and continually send out messages of what the policies of the government are. My party happens to be the government now, and so that is the government policy of Canada. As I say, I do this every month, try to communicate with constituents and welcome the responses. I don't just do this during election campaigns or make a bunch of promises to have you vote for me again. I expect that people will vote locally on the record and the service to the community. Those who would care to look can see on my website at any time throughout what has been done for Calgary-Centre in the last 2 years particularly, but certainly in the last 7 years. It's all on the net, always has been, always open to your views. Again, I want to say thank you to Robert and the people here for putting this on. I think there is a difference between running for the municipal politics or the school board or provincial government. We deal here with federal issues, how it affects our role in the entire country. And that's what I hope to continue to do for you, and ask for your support on May 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you again to those that organized the event. It was one of the best interactive forums that I've been at, and I've been at a lot in my 7 elected years and my another 7 years as a federal candidate.
Another elected one.
Thank you for all the questions too. Your priorities in Calgary-Centre will be my priorities. In this election, you have clear choices. You can choose political experience or none. You can choose an agenda focused on people and their lives, or on corporations and taxation. You can choose prisons, fighter jets, or you can choose healthcare, education, pensions, and innovation. I chose the Liberals because of their strong economic and social agenda focused on the future. I'm asking for you to vote. Please weigh your vote carefully. Unlike Mr. Richardson, I am concerned about voter apathy. Your vote is the greatest symbol of freedom and equality in any democracy. After being on the doorstep, I know that most of you are not happy with our current MPs and Mr. Harper's style of governing. I'm asking for your support. I promise to work to gain your respect in your service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all of you for being here tonight to witness a little history being made. We're a very lucky people in a very lucky city, and we have the opportunity to sit back and deliberate over the next 8 days, to think about what really matters to us in our lives as we select the person we want to represent us in Ottawa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am running because I believe the Green Party of Canada has the authority to deal with the smart economy this city deserves. Your pocketbook matters, ladies and gentlemen.
You have a right to expect that a government will balance the books, will deal transparently with your finances, and will see to it that we get out of the gamesmanship and get on with the business of running this country effectively. I'm also running because the Green Party of Canada has the track record to deal with strong communities. Your neighborhood matters. Everyone who lives in our cities, in our communities, rich or poor, young or old, deserves to be able to step up to the table and contribute to the betterment of your community. And what Ottawa can do is be a partner at the table and make sure that the community's needs get done and get accomplished. And I'm also running, ladies and gentlemen, because the Green Party of Canada believes in true democracy. Your voice matters. This is not about just getting that final tally at the end of May 2nd. This election is about making sure that we continue the conversation on May 3rd and beyond to make sure that your issues are addressed and your voices are heard. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will thank Robert and everyone here at the Killarney Glengarry Community Association for hosting this event tonight. Thank you all so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Much obliged.
Anytime. In a couple of months, maybe.
And I guess I would close by saying that the weight of my words will be measured in how many of you come out, do your duty at the ballot box, make your choice with due consideration, because I believe that when you look at all the options available to you, your best choice for Calgary-Centre will be to help me turn Calgary-Centre green. So thank you once again.
Well, to the candidates, I have to thank them for coming out. The unfortunate part is, well, for the incumbent league anyway, if you do get the job, you've got to re-get it in X amount of time. It's always a difficult part of it. So thanks for coming out, folks. Hope to see you in the community.
Jennifer Pollock has a tea for seniors and a music social as well, coming up on Wednesday, April 27th.
And to be fair, does the Green have anything going? We'll think of something.
I taught school for 15 years.
Oh no, we can't have it. We can't have a shower fest now. No. Okay, let's get our hands together for the